I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
The Supreme Court steps.
Speaking to you from the Supreme Court, we have read from the bench there is a right to marriage equality. I repeat, speaking to you from the steps of the Supreme Court, there is a right to marriage equality.
And now tonight's host, Alex Mohajer.
Welcome to our special live stream celebration of Pride at 50, an era of fighting for equality, hosted by the Stonewall Democratic Club. I'm Alex Mohajer, the Public and Media Relations Chairman of Stonewall, and I will be your host and moderator this evening. I'd like to thank all of the people joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, as well as to 90.7 KPFK FM radio, who is simulcasting this broadcast to 11 million homes tonight on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the very first LGBTQ Pride March, and who has been airing special Pridecast programming produced and hosted by Stonewall all day today in the lead up to this event. So thank you to KPFK for your support and your partnership. Tonight, I will be joined by an esteemed panel of nonprofit, political, and thought leaders and activists to celebrate our pride, as well as reflect on the history of the LGBTQIA+ movement, especially in this moment in time. We will talk about the progress this movement has made, the unique responsibility the queer community has to current Black Lives Matter protests, the work that is left to be done, and hopefully we can sprinkle in some fun and some surprise guests along the way. If you like what you hear tonight, please consider joining us at www.stonewalldems.org. Join. With less than 120 days left before Election Day, we have a lot of work to do. if we want to win local, city, statewide, and national races across the country and right here in LA. We need your help, and the future of our democracy depends on it. Please join us. But now on to our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Reggie Greer. Reggie Greer currently serves as the LGBTQ plus vote director for Vice President Joe Biden's 2020 campaign for president. He previously served as the constituent engagement director at LGBTQ Victory Institute, where he supported LGBTQ plus elected and appointed leaders around the country. And prior to that, he was the deputy director of public engagement at the United States Department of Transportation, appointed by President Barack Obama, who we miss. He holds a BA from Georgetown University in government and history. Please welcome Reggie Greer.
Hello, Alex. How are you? It's good to be here.
So glad that you could join us, Reggie. Thanks for joining us. Next up, we have Tori Osborne. She's the former executive director of the LA LGBT Center. She has been a social justice activist for over 50 years, beginning in the anti-war and civil rights movements of the 60s through lesbian feminist women's music and the AIDS epidemic, and onto racial and economic justice work in the 90s up to now. She was CEO of both NGLTF and the LA LGBT Center, as well as Liberty Hill Foundation. She's a former deputy mayor to Antonio Villaraigosa. She's currently senior strategist to LA County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl and works on labor, immigration, and criminal justice reform issues. Please welcome Tori Osborne.
Glad to be here.
So glad you could join us. Next up is my very dear friend, Ryan O'Connor. He's an actor and a writer. He was called by People magazine one of Oprah's chosen ones. So, bow down. And an Advocate magazine, 40 Under 40 Most Influential Queer Voices. He has lived an openly gay life in showbiz and activism for over 20 years. He's appeared on Oprah, HBO's Big Little Lies, and award-winning solo shows across the country, including one called Eat, Pray, Love, which I'm going to ask him about in a bit. Ryan has also worked as a field organizer for Hillary Clinton in Michigan in 2016, so we're going to talk about that too. And as a surrogate spokesperson for the well-being and future of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden in 2020, please welcome my friend Ryan O'Connor.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here.
Good to see you.
Happy Pride, everyone.
Happy Pride. Are you wearing a caftan?
Always.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Next up, thank you so much for joining us. And next up, we have the Honorable Mayor Lindsay P. Horvath, who was elected to the West Hollywood City Council on March 3rd, 2015. She previously served as a council member for 2 years, from 2009 to 2011. She has a long history of civic and social justice advocacy and is a champion of LGBTQ rights. She has served as a board member of the Victory Fund and a founding board member of the No Hate campaign. In 2009, she represented the city of West Hollywood in the National Equality March in Washington, D.C. She has also advocated for LGBTQ older adults through her work on the Board of Services and Advocacy for GLBT Elders, also known as SAGE. She's also a very dear friend. Please welcome Mayor Lindsay Horvath.
My pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Blossom C. Brown is an actress, a producer, a writer, a motivational speaker, and an activist. She is originally from the birthplace of blues in Greenwood, Mississippi. She got her degree in public health education from Mississippi University for Women, where she became the first openly Black trans woman to graduate. Her story got the world's attention when she appeared in season 1 of Caitlyn Jenner's docuseries I Am Kate, and for her appearance on The Ellen Show in season 13. She currently lives in Los Angeles and is in the nonprofit world fighting for social change within the health spectrum. Please welcome Blossom Brown.
How are you? Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday and happy Pride, and happy Pride to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm very excited about this conversation and to celebrate 50 years of the Pride March with you guys. So Blossom, I'd like to start the conversation with you tonight, but first I'd like to share a clip with our viewers so they can get a little bit of a perspective about just who you are.
Last night, a trans woman made her voice heard.
It happened during a CNN town hall with 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke. Take a listen.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to take this away from you, but let me tell you something. Black trans women are being killed in this country, and CNN, you have erased Black trans women for the last time. Let me tell you something. Black trans women are dying. Our lives matter. I'm an extraordinary Black trans woman, and I deserve to be here.
Woo! Blossom Brown. I have chills still. You know, Blossom, I was sitting just feet away from you when that happened. And I have to say, you shook me out of a state of complacency that night because, you know, CNN had been training everybody on how to be camera ready and how to be very professional on camera. And we were very, very concerned with just looking great and being in our seats at the right time. And when you did that, you really woke everybody up to the reality of the situation and the reality for trans women, which is oftentimes still a very marginalized part of our community. So this year especially, Pride cannot be celebrated without acknowledging the critical and oftentimes dangerous work that has been done and continues to be done by Black queer voices and activists like Martha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who saw it. So we saw in that intro video, she was talking to gay men who were forcing her and the trans community out of mainstream queer activism. So activists like yourself are working really to prevent the erasure of Black queer folks, especially Black transgender women, and the whitewashing of queer history, even from within our own community. So can you talk to me about what the experience has been for you, and are you seeing progress, especially with the current protests that are going on?
Yeah, it has been a crazy experience, but we are definitely starting to see change, and I'm so grateful to be a part of that change. You know, just jumping to these protests, I think these protests have been so powerful because this is where the Black movement has risen out of the ashes, and we are starting to see more Black voices being heard, including myself as a Black trans woman. I will say within the Black movement, it has been difficult for me as a Black trans woman because I'm always having to defend my Blackness to other Black people and also my existence as a trans person. And see, a lot of people don't know about that because we're not willing to peel back the layers just yet. I think that we are definitely shifting very powerfully in this movement, but we must remind each other, and we must be reminded actually that until all LGBTQ people are free, none of us are free. I think it's a little bit more difficult right now for the trans community because as rights are being protected in some areas, trans rights are being stripped away in others. And it's almost becoming like the trans community has become the sacrificial lamb within everything that's going on. And so this is where I personally ask our allies, our accomplices to step up for us and keep that same energy that we've been keeping all Pride long to help the trans community.
Thank you. And, you know, when I hear you talk about that, Blossom, I really think about, you know, Lindsay, I think about you and, you know, you're a very young mayor of a city that's pretty well known for its LGBTQ community. And you're coming at this from a perspective that's a little bit different. You're a straight presenting, white presenting ally, but you've been such a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ community. What is the role of elected officials when you hear people like Blossom share their story and you see these protests going on? What has this been like for you? And what do you think the responsibility is for other city and local municipality leaders like yourself to this movement?
Well, when I found out Blossom and Tori were on this panel, I was so excited to join. Not that I don't know the other two, but I don't know them as well. And Tori and Blossom just inspire me every day. And, you know, I think what we need to do as elected officials is remember who put us in our seats and the reasons why we ran. And for me, you know, I've always been part of organizations like Stonewall Democratic Club, and thank you for hosting tonight. Because there are so many issues to be working on. And as an elected official now, I rely on the organizations and the activists who are pushing the conversation, who are pushing these issues, making them front and center. And so that way on the inside, I'm able to move and shift power to help support and fill the needs that are being demanded in the community. I think that inside outside approach is how we make social justice change. And West Hollywood has always fought for human rights. We're a new city, incorporated in 1984, but in the decades since our incorporation, we have always been at the forefront of many issues. And I think it's what people expect of us. And so I'm very glad to be in a community that has these conversations and will continue to push the envelope and fight for everyone's rights.
Yeah, and you brought up Tori, and Tori, you have been an activist for a very long time and have had a very unique front row seat to many of our fights. So I want to just pay respects to you for that. And while Stonewall is remembered as the riot that sparked the gay liberation movement, as we know it, others have come before it, and you have had a front row seat to the ACT UP movement, to the gay liberation movement, to the Prop 8 movement. And now we're seeing this fight continue on today with the Black Lives Matter protests, which I feel that our community has a unique responsibility to. So from your purview, as someone who's had a front row seat, how have you seen this movement change, and what has been your experience? And just share with us a little bit about how you've seen it grow and progress.
Well, make no mistake about this moment that we're in right now. We're in a movement moment. And truthfully, in 50 plus years of activism of my own, I have not seen this since the 60s. I have not seen the level of determination, of unity, of energy, synergy, dynamism. And it is not a coincidence that at this moment, the issue that has been percolating a little bit front and center, but frankly at the margins, which is the trans issue, has popped into the center. And that, I haven't been able to protest myself because I'm 70 and I have health issues, but my heart has been on the streets for the last month. And I just want to say that this kind of movement moment does not last forever. We've seen it before. We saw it after Prop 8 passed. We've seen the riot that spawned the gay liberation movement. I've seen several smaller movement moments, sort of queer and not queer focused, but with queers at the front lines. And I want to say that it's really important we go big, we go strong. And Blossom, by the way, when you did that in that debate, I don't know you. We haven't met. We've probably been at the same rallies and protests. But that was one of those moments that sliced through the BS and put the issue up front. And look where we are today because of moments like that. So I just want to say one other thing. Because I'm a social movement person, although I'm working inside government, and I love the inside-outside stuff that Lindsay was talking about. Social movements, the ordinary people getting engaged in changing the conditions of their lives, is really what changes things. It's why Joe Biden is moving, to the left and has moved to the left. Frankly, it's not as much Bernie Sanders as it is Black Lives Matter in the streets and Blossom in the CNN town halls. And the kind of, infrastructure, relationships, and energy and leaders that have been built over time that then explode. My friend John D'Amelio, gay historian, calls it leaping and creeping. There are moments of visibility, and we're in one of those leaping moments right now. But make no mistake about it, it will not last forever, and then it will recede, and we will go back to building the base camp for the next great leap. But this one is incredible. In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of an election, with the fascism creeping in Washington, this is incredible. And I just think we have to make the most of it. And right now, the issue up front for us is the violence against the Black community with Black trans up front for our community. But it's also everybody on the streets. Everybody's on the streets. And that's what I really love about it. So we're going to push big. We're going to push hard. We're going to get Joe elected. We're going to flip the Senate. We'll hold the House, expand the House, and make the country blue, because that is the only way that we save the planet and move towards liberty and justice for all.
I'm inspired and ready to hit the streets now too. Just right after this is done, I'm out there. Thank you for that. And I'm like, literally, I'm a kind of an emotional person, Tori. I want you to know. So that was like, you're getting me choked up. And I really feel the weight of this movement, and especially on this day. And I hope that I can do it justice. And you brought up Joe Biden. And there is a certain somebody in this conversation tonight, Reggie Greer, who is the LGBTQ director for Vice President Biden. And Joe Biden famously sort of beat Obama out and advocated for marriage equality before the president came out openly to support it. He's been an ally for the LGBTQ community. And what is the role of him right now in this movement? And what's he going to do to help usher this movement into real political and electoral change? And I know that you're here just representing him, and I'll ask you what you feel we can do to support him to make that happen.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that, Alex. It's hard to follow Tori and Blossom and the mayor and Ryan after incredibly inspiring openings. But I think that the thing that everybody can do more of right now is what we're doing. I think Tori said it best. We are in a movement. And for me personally, as a gay Black man with a disability who kind of understands how people live, people on the margins, understanding that government hasn't always represented their best interests, speaking up is what we are called to do. It's our responsibility to do that. I think about what a good friend of mine, Yemi Adebomiri, said, lean into your queerness. I think that LGBTQ people don't realize how powerful and influential their voices actually are. And the fact that everybody's speaking up is a testament to the folks who have been fighting for so long to even get people to the place where saying Black Lives Matter isn't controversial. I think that's the really surprising and maybe even heartwarming part for me, is that now people from Fortune 500 companies to elected officials and leaders of all sorts and all backgrounds are saying Black Lives Matter, and they're meaning it, and they're putting their sincere beliefs behind it. That is why we're in a movement moment, that people laid the foundation to get us here. You mentioned Vice President Biden coming out in support of marriage equality in 2012 on Meet the Press, which was a moment in which LGBTQ people remember like yesterday. And the thing that he has said to me and said to so many people in public and private is that he did it because he knew that the people were already there, that government hadn't caught up to the people, understanding that we deserve basic dignity in marriage and that we deserve so much more in the rights and in law. And that's just the kind of person that Joe Biden is. So when Tori talks about being in a movement moment, you're looking at someone who sees LGBTQ people for who they are, for who we are. He sees us in our lived experiences. He understands that we are fighting, having serious, complex, and hard conversations right now, and trying to create a campaign that will morph into a government that can represent us fully, can fight for us throughout the federal government in a way that really reflects all of us, our whole selves, not just parts of our identities, but our whole selves. So my ask for everyone is simple: just lean into your queerness, as Yemi says all the time, and I'm so happy to say that and attribute that to her. But just stay out there, engaged in these conversations, get active in the virtual campaign trail. We are in a virtual campaign reality, which makes it a little bit different than a typical campaign cycle, but go out there and support pro-equality elected officials. The Stonewall Democratic Club has done such a great job of elevating the voices of LGBTQ and pro-equality elected official or candidates out there, including the vice president. Support all of them up and down the ticket so that we can actually create a government from Washington to state houses to municipalities across the country that see us again and will fully represent us. So we are in a movement moment. I'm proud to be out there with everyone in this moment. Black lives matter, Black trans lives matter. And if we're able to get Joe Biden into the White House, we can finally start to turn back all the disastrous rules and policies that Donald Trump has intentionally directed toward the marginalized among us, because we deserve a government where the levers of government aren't pulled in that direction and actually are there to benefit all of our lives. So I'm just happy to be a part of this conversation, and I'm just looking forward to engaging in a lively discussion.
And we are so pleased to have you. And, you know, we have an election in less than 120 days. So if you are not yet registered to vote, and just a spoiler alert, full disclosure, the Stonewall Democratic Club has endorsed Vice President Biden in the presidential race. So that's just a full disclosure. But if you have not yet registered, you can do so right now at stonewalldems.org/register. Register yourself, register 5 other people you know, because that election's coming up. And with that election coming up, you know, a lot of people have 2016 trauma. And on that topic, I'd like to turn to Ryan, who's in show business and has been in show business for 20 years as an out gay man. And in 2016, you felt motivated to up and leave LA and move to Northern Michigan to work as a field organizer for Hillary Clinton's campaign, which, as we recall, did not turn out the way that we had hoped.
No.
So explain to me a little bit about what motivated you to do that, and what you feel is the responsibility of people in show business and in entertainment, especially queer people in entertainment, to help see this through to fruition in November.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. And everyone on this panel is just incredible. I'm honored to be a part of it, and don't feel qualified, but I'll do the best I can. And you know, it is, I do have 2016 trauma, and I know lots of people do. And I remember, you know, I went to work for the Hillary campaign because I was at a time in my life when I was really looking for a win. The show that I wrote about, it was called Eat, Pray, Vote. And it was about that I had lost all this weight, and then I became, I got sober, I became a recovered alcoholic, and I went through a divorce, and I just needed to like get out of show business for a little while and go be a part of something that was a win, which, if you remember, this time in 2016 felt like such a sure thing, you know? Like, obviously there's no such thing as a sure election, but it certainly did not feel like what it was about to become in just in 120 days from where we were here. And it did. I went and worked in Northern Oakland County, one of the most, you know, determined to be one of the most important counties in the election, and flipping important states like Michigan. And the responsibility became very, very big as the election got closer and closer. And what I learned on my second day was about listening to people. I went in, cisgendered white man with, you know, like I wear my gay pride with a flair and abundance. I love a caftan. I love a dyed hair. I love a head wrap. This is all Elizabeth Taylor behind me. I live in queer culture, left, right, and center. That's who I am. And I get that privilege because at the end of the day, the truth is, everything that marginalizes me is real and is a reality, but I can turn most of it off. I can present just about any way that I need to be able to get through the world safely. And I learned that on my second day at the election office. I was so overwhelmed. And this woman named Veronica Taylor, I'll never forget her. This woman walked into to the office, and it was my second day. I had just learned how to use the phones and log into the computer. I knew nothing. And she came in and she said, she's an African-American woman, probably about, probably mid-50s. And she came in and she came in, and this Black woman came in with a purpose, right? Like, she came in ready to do something. And she said, I'm here to find out why I should vote for Hillary Clinton. And I said, you're here to find out why you should vote for Hillary Clinton. And I said, I think you mean why you should volunteer for Hillary Clinton. Totally. And she said, no, I need to know why I should vote for Hillary Clinton. She went on to tell me the story of her son, who was incarcerated for what she believed was a false accusation about petty theft, basically a convenience store small-scale robbery. And he was wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, and wrongfully incarcerated. And she went on to tell me the story about how she didn't feel that whatever was happening at that moment in time, she did not feel heard or seen. And I said to her something that I will probably regret for the rest of my life. But I'm so glad I did, because I said to her, I said, well, as an African-American woman, which I now wish I had just said as a Black woman, or I wish I had just skipped it completely, but I said as an African-American woman, I hope that you understand that Hillary Clinton is the best possible candidate to further the legacy that's been established by Barack Obama and his administration. It did not go over well. And she did not she said, I need you to do something for me. I need you to sit down. And she sat me down in the middle of our campaign office in Pontiac, Michigan. And she said, this isn't about hashtags. This isn't about all this bullshit. Basically, she said, I don't know if I can cuss. I didn't ask, but I'm going to. She said, it isn't about all this stuff that you all think is what you're going to get to activate us. This is about me saying to you, what is Hillary Clinton going to do for my son who is in prison? And she broke me. I didn't know what to say. And I said, I don't know. Veronica, I don't know. I don't know, but I know one thing is for certain, that terrifying orange blob of a man is not going to do anything for him. I don't know that Hillary is going to be able to do everything you want her to do for your son specifically, but I know that he can't do it because he doesn't have the empathy, he doesn't have the heart, he doesn't have the life. And I said, so I hope that me admitting that I don't know the answer is enough, but if you come meet me here tomorrow, I'll keep trying to figure it out. She did. She came and met me the next day. She worked every single day of the election for free. She ended up running our phone banks, and she's now one of the top campaign volunteers and will probably be working once we get past the DNC. It looks like she will probably be working in basically the capacity I was working for Hillary. She'll be working in that capacity for Joe Biden. She's been walking around. She's been making her own Biden shirts into Biden masks. She has these Biden masks that she ties around her face, and she goes and gives them to people so that they use their mask to spread the word for Biden. And I think that one of the thing that I'm most grateful there is that for myself is that I was able to say I don't know, and I think that is something that I hope that Democrats, liberals across the board, are learning the power of saying I don't know, or I didn't hear you say it again. I'm sorry I didn't do it right the first time, or I didn't understand. Joe Biden does that so well. He's so good at owning where he wishes he had done something differently, but he also owns that he can't change the past. And he says, I hear you now. And when I hear people like Blossom putting their lives on the line, I mean, Blossom is putting her life on the line by showing up live on television and calling out CNN for not recognizing her. She's putting her life on the line. It's not just her voice, it's her life. And I look at that clip of Sylvia Rivera that has run for God knows how long. How many years have I been in gay bars, at pride events, with the beautiful boys and doing all the things that we do, all the parades? How many years I, a privileged white gay male, have watched that clip in the fun and been like, oh, thank God that she was there. Thank God we had Sylvia Rivera. Oh my God, I love what she did for drag queens. I love the idea of her. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was about 2 weeks ago I heard the context of that speech that she made. And you know what she was saying? I mean, you touched on it, Alex, but you know what she was saying was, I'm doing all of this for all of you, and why don't you hear me? Why aren't you listening to me when I say I'm doing all this and you don't hear that I don't feel seen, heard, and respected? And I personally want to apologize to Sylvia Rivera and all the trans women like her, trans men and women like her, who I didn't hear for way too long. And I hope that I can be one of many people in this moment, like Tori's talking about, this movement moment, where I can be somebody who says, okay, I'm listening. What can I do to help? What can I do to amplify your voice? And what can I do to help make sure you get heard? Because that's clearly where the change is going to come from, is people wanting to get heard. And just to make that all one fell swoop, I know that I fought for someone who I love, Hillary Clinton. I'm passionate about her, but I fought for her knowing that there were some people who did not care for her, and I had to try to convince them. And Biden is somebody who we're going to be in the same with the same situation. We have a very vocal group of people who want to be heard above the noise, and they want at all costs. And I just want people to stop and acknowledge that Joe Biden is a candidate with a consistent history of listening, admitting he was wrong, and changing course when course needs to be changed. It is so important to value that in him. So important. That's my thoughts.
And I think, you touched on something that I think is very important, which is that right now is the time to say, I don't know, and to learn and to educate ourselves. And when we talk about the orange blob and what he's done in the last 4 years, I think a lot of us feel, and correct me, anyone chime in if you disagree, that it was even worse than we had anticipated, although we had anticipated that it would be pretty bad. This is a very anti-gay, anti-trans president who has worked to put in administration officials and appoint officials to his administration that are very anti-LGBTQ, and has taken active steps to hurt and harm our community, and especially people in our community who are the most vulnerable. So I want to turn the conversation a little bit to the importance of making sure that this is a one-term president. And, Reggie, jump in, Mayor Horvath, please jump in, Tori, please jump in as you see fit. But what's the importance to the LGBTQ community? And really talk to me about how vital it is that the queer community activate and organize around this common goal.
I mean, I'll dive in. I'll dive in. Sometimes we are for our own issues, and sometimes we're showing up for others. And I have to tell you, the children in cages makes me crazy. The hatred of women makes me crazy. The fact we have a white supremacist in the White House, it's like, this is not okay. And by the way, Joe Biden has I've never in my life been so glad that I'm working to elect a president on basic human decency. Suddenly decency matters as much as any policy issue. Just who he is, that empathy and that kindness. But so we are in those detention camps. Queers are everywhere. That's the first thing. We are everywhere. It's not just people who live in West Hollywood or who are, known to be queer. We are everywhere. And we also have learned to show up for other people. So on criminal justice, on immigration, it's not the policy issues. It's human. It's the planet, right? Environmentalism is not a gay issue, except that it's the future of the planet. So we're, by the way, we're leaders in all of the social movements that I've ever seen. There have been queers in leadership positions or behind the scenes in leadership positions in every single movement I've been part of. In anti-war movements, in social all criminal justice, economic justice, women's movement. The women's movement wouldn't exist without lesbians. Let's face it. So anyway, it's not just about our issue, or the fact that he keeps, doing bad things against trans people. He hates us. He hates queer. He hates all of us, but he hates, I think, transgender people the worst because transgender folks are the most vulnerable. It's the newest group to be empowered. So it's still a movement that's developing consciousness and bringing allies and building itself. So he goes after it because it's the most vulnerable. So, I think it's everything. I don't think it's just queer issues. I think it's the whole panoply. And I think the protests point that out, the unity on the streets.
And, you talked about Donald Trump's disdain for the trans community. And, just a week ago, we had a landmark decision that came out of the Supreme Court that protects LGBTQ workers in the workplace from workplace discrimination. It was a trans woman who was one of the claimants in that case that resulted in this landmark ruling that grants us those protections. And then just days later, the president announced that he would be signing an executive order that would try to bar trans women from receiving trans people from receiving healthcare protections and healthcare. So when you hear that, Blossom, I want to know, how does this make you feel, and what do you feel is the way that we take this movement now and move it into electoral change and real change in November?
Yeah, it is very detrimental. And when I say detrimental, I kid you not. Detrimental, when I talk about that, when it comes to gender affirming surgeries for trans people that are life saving for us, that could be potentially blocked. Also, access to mental health services, access to life saving services within the trans community. I feel like Donald Trump likes to use us as a pawn because we are the easiest community for him to pick on, which is really interesting because the T and the Q are always kind of singled out within the LGBTQ spectrum. And the reality of it is hard for the trans community. Things are a lot, things are 10 times harder for us because we're always having to fight for the crumbs. And see, the reality of it is, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, in order to beat Donald Trump, it is going to take accomplices. And let me be very clear when I say accomplices, because anybody can say they're an ally. And let me be very clear. I'm not white and I'm not cis. Let me repeat that again. I'm not white and I'm not cis. So those are the people that need to be putting in access, that need to be putting in prestige, that need to be putting in privilege and helping our community any way possible. Because it's going to take all of us coming together to beat Donald Trump. But one thing I will say about our trans community, we are the most resilient community around. They can twist us, they can bend us, but they can never break us. Just thinking about Donald Trump, and I do think he is going to be a one-term president. That is for sure. And I've met Joe Biden before during years ago at an event. And, times have definitely changed. People have changed. And, hopefully we will be able to work with Joe when it comes to trans rights, because guess what? When Joe becomes president, we have a lot of work to do in the trans community to be able to reestablish the rights that we have lost. And again, just going back to the healthcare part, again, it's life-saving for the trans community, okay? Suicide is at an all-time high rate within the trans community. And a lot of gender-affirming surgeries actually save lives. And me personally speaking, my life has been saved by having gender-affirming surgeries. And so that's how crucial it really, really is for us to be advocating and for us to be fighting on the front lines for the trans community. Gay marriage was passed, and we marched alongside the gay community for rights, because when we talk about intersectionality, there are trans people, there are same gender loving trans people as well too. So of course we're going to march. But the reality of it is, it wasn't just the healthcare rights that were taken away from trans people. We weren't able to serve in the military. We weren't able to use the restrooms that we feel most comfortable with. And the reality of it is, it's beginning to the point where this side has gotten what they want, and it's almost like damn the rest. And see, we gotta be real and start having these conversations, because the reality of it is, it's like planting a seed in the ground and you're watering it, but there's no growth because you have not shined a light to make that seed grow. And that light is what's going on in the trans community as part of the LGBTQ spectrum. Once you when you shine the light on the trans community and the issues that we're facing, guess what? The LGBTQ movement grows. It becomes, we manifest it into something great, something abundant. And so if we're not willing to put the conversation on the table for us all to come together and to look at what's going on here, then we haven't gotten too far in the LGBTQ movement. And we may need to rethink a few things. I know we have the mayor on here, and I want to say something to the mayor right quick. I humbly appreciate you, because when we painted the trans flag a couple of weeks ago, you said to me, you are always welcome in our city. Powerful. You are always welcome in our city. And let me tell you something, as a trans woman, I have experienced violence in that city. violence. And that meant the world to me because that's where we could begin to implement change. And it's like what my good sister Ashley Marie Preston says, we can't heal what we don't reveal.
You're so
Lindsay,
right.
Yeah, go on, Lindsay.
Yeah, you're so right. I think there's a right now, as Tori said, this is a moment that is part of a larger movement. And if we don't take this opportunity to have the conversations and really understand what is going on and what people's experiences are, and get outside of ourselves and stop thinking each of us has the answers and start listening to each other, we're going to miss the whole opportunity for change. And I think that is what is so powerful about this movement. And Blossom, your voice is so strong and so powerful. And I am so inspired by the people who are taking to the streets, who are not taking no for an answer, who are, demanding more and demanding it now. I think, while bureaucracy was created in theory, to create transparency and to allow public participation, right now bureaucracy slows processes down and doesn't allow for the change to happen in real time. And, let's be clear, when we're talking about the forthcoming election, we currently have someone occupying the White House who decided to have a kickoff event on Juneteenth in Oklahoma. This is a person who, as you said, Alex, passed restrictions on healthcare protections for LGBT people on the anniversary of the Pulse shooting during Pride Month. These actions are intentional. There is no question where this administration stands on our issues. And when I say our issues, it must be a coalition of people working together our issues. And so, as Blossom has said, it's going to take accomplices, people who want to make things happen, not just stand idly by and say nice things, but make things happen. And it's going to take all of us. And as Tori said too, I think while those of us who hold seats of decision-making authority, we have to use those. But every person has a voice. Every person has a say. If your vote wasn't that powerful or didn't mean anything, they wouldn't be working so hard to deprive people of the right to vote in the first place. We know that's happening in all of the communities we're counting on to win. So your vote and your voice matters, and it matters now, not 20 and 30 and 40 years from now, right in this moment. What you are experiencing, you got to cast a ballot about. You got to think about what it is you want going on in this country and use your vote to make that happen. And I think that's really what we need to be learning from this moment, is we can't take anything for granted. There are so many rights that we have now that a generation or two ago we didn't have. And they're all in jeopardy now because we took them for granted. And in theory, we're doing all of this work so future generations can't take them for granted and can count on them. But right now we're seeing a backlash to the movements for all kinds of equality. And as was said, no one is equal until everyone is equal. We have to stand arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder to get this work done. We cannot leave anyone behind. And when we do that, when we bring everyone together and we march forward together, we will win. But we will only win if we stay together.
Absolutely. And, Reggie, I want to turn the conversation to you. When Lindsay talks about the coalition that's needed to win, we lost the 2016 election by 77,000 votes in 3 states in the Electoral College and won the popular vote by 3 million votes, and still had our candidates deprived of the seats that some of us feel was stolen from her. That's me. But it's really crucial to, I think, discuss how we build the coalition that's needed to win in November. And how do you see that going? And how do you think Joe can win the coalition needed to put him over the top, especially in these swing states where it's not as progressive as California or New York, where people aren't maybe as forward thinking about trans rights or LGBTQ rights? And how do you balance the interest of serving those populations and protecting them, and also bringing people together in those middle ground states towards the common purpose of electing Joe Biden?
Yeah, yeah, Alex, I think it comes down to there are undergirding and underlying principles and values that we all aspire to and believe in. And in this campaign, we're having to remind each other of those values. When you're talking about trans rights, you're talking about basic fairness and decency, as Tori mentioned and Blossom mentioned. You're talking about respect. And when people hear that, whether they live in Michigan or California or Texas or Georgia, they get it. And we have to stay true to the messages and the ways in which we know can unite us. I must say, when we're talking about coalition building, it is, as a member of the coalition department in the campaign, as director of the LGBTQ vote constituency group, it is the most exciting part of Joe Biden's campaign because it's a reflection of who he is. He understands that if we're going to win in November, we're going to have to put together a winning coalition in which it makes up. We're people who belong to the labor community and women and LGBTQ people and Black people and Latinos and AAPI people and so forth and so on, join together and talking about each issues together in a collaborative way so that we're not siloing ourselves. And, every day it's a morning meeting where we're talking about our issues as a community, intersectional community. I'm not by myself only talking about LGBTQ issues by myself. And I think that it is a model that President Obama and Vice President Biden built in 2008, perfected in 2012, and we are and that this nominee is taking and running with it and building. I might have mentioned it earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. But there are 11 million LGBTQ voters in the country. There are 57 million pro-equality voters in the country. If you think about the margins of victory, we can make the difference, right? So Alpha Biden, an initiative that we've just launched to ensure that LGBTQ voices, especially LGBTQ Black and brown voices and trans voices, are elevated in a way that these messages become universal as the coordinated campaign starts and as we start to fight to build that winning coalition. Alpha Biden is our way of saying, we're not going to take any vote for granted in this election. That as we think about the challenges that voters will face in a virtual campaign reality, whether that's learning how to vote by mail or that being registered to vote in ways that they're not used to, that we're going to be helpful in that process all the way through November 3rd, so that people feel comfortable and they feel empowered to be involved. Blossom said something that really sort of triggered a thought here when she talked about how detrimental the policies coming out of this White House have been, continue to be. The question is simple: who do you want? Who do you want your president and your elected officials empowering? And for Donald Trump, he has spent 3.5 years empowering all of the anti-LGBTQ, anti-women, anti-labor, anti-trans folks who have been sidelined for a reason. They were at the forefront of pushing policies, anti-environmental policies, etc., that people, even reasonable people, no matter where they lived in the country, realized weren't good governing policies and practices. And Donald Trump, not knowing any better, and not having the leadership capabilities to do better, and not rising to the occasion of the presidency, ceded his authority to these people. And now you have people in important positions throughout the administration making policies they have no business touching or even being in conversation about. These are policies that affect our lives and our well-being and our ability to thrive. So when you are encouraging people and telling people, why should I vote? Why should I vote for Joe Biden? Tell them, who do you want your president empowering? A president has the ability to make upwards of 4,100 appointments in a federal administration. That's 4,100 people who have the ability to make laws on healthcare, laws on labor, policies and rules on energy and the environment, the Interior Department, which maintains all of our public lands, all the important positions in the White House that will be making policies dealing with people living with HIV and AIDS, so forth and so on. You can literally make the difference by electing Joe Biden and giving LGBTQ people once again a seat at the table. When Vice President Biden was in office, along with President Obama, they appointed over 300 LGBTQ people into their administration, which accounted for about 8% of all federal appointments. If you are looking at the Williams Institute data, which is right in LA, they say that the population it could be anywhere between 5% or 10%. You take the 5% number, we may have accounted, fortunately, for more federal appointments than our population share. That's incredible. If you think about how influential then our voices were during those 8 years in power, just imagine the shared reality that we can walk back into with Joe Biden as President Biden, if we get him elected in November. So I know that these times are tough, and we're doing what we can to care for our family and our friends and those around us. But we will find a country after this is all over with, in some shape. No matter how we find our country, we have to pick it up and carry it forward. And if you think about the shared vision that we can all walk into together, that's exciting. And we can get people excited about that. And people can use their votes to make that shared vision a reality.
Thank you, Reggie. And snaps all around. And if you are just joining us, you are listening to Pride at 50, an era of fighting for equality, hosted by the Stonewall Democratic Club. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, and being broadcast to 11 million homes tonight on KPFK 90.7 FM radio in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. So thank you for joining us. If you're liking what you're hearing, please visit us at stonewalldems.org/pride at 50 and consider donating. Any small amount helps. All of the proceeds from tonight will go towards Stonewall's political action and advocacy operations ahead of this November's elections. So please join us, donate, and if you'd like to join Stonewall and become a paying member, you can join us at stonewalldems.org/join for only $25 a year. You can be a member of this amazing organization and help us win back the White House and the Senate and keep the House of Representatives and all the way down ticket to your state and local elections, which will be very important. stonewalldems.org/join. I'd also like to take a moment right now to thank the people that have already donated during this broadcast: Nancy Pollock, Shane Nguyen, Steve Roy, George Gascon, Mackenzie Hussman, Jane Wishon, Teresa Brown, Karen Ayers, Lorraine Lundquist. I'm going to butcher these names, even though I know some of you. Freddie Puza, John Erickson, Sandra Fluke, Anna Cosma. Thank you guys so much. And to all the other people who have been donating, and please join us in this effort. So right now, I'd like to surprise you guys with a little. First, I've got a little statement from somebody who we couldn't get in on the call. It was a little last second, but he felt so strongly about this. He wanted to address everybody who's listening tonight. It is a message from George Gascon. He's the former San Francisco district attorney and Stonewall's endorsed candidate for district attorney, and he's currently running against the incumbent Jackie Lacey, who Stonewall has withdrawn its endorsement from, and we are now endorsing Mr. Gascon. If you care about some of the issues being presented by Black Lives Matter and you care about criminal justice reform, we believe that George Gascon is that candidate, and his statement is as follows. On the 50th anniversary of Pride, I joined the Stonewall Democratic Club in celebrating the many gains for the LGBTQ community that they have made in fighting for equality. I have eternal gratitude for the thousands of activists that marched 50 years ago and those that have never stopped marching as we celebrate the anniversary of same-sex marriage legalization, bans on discrimination, and the increasing elections of LGBTQ public officials. We are nevertheless confronted with the many challenges the community still faces. And as we talk about equal access to liberty, we must also talk about equal access to justice. Our trans, Black, brown, and undocumented sisters and brothers continue to face significantly greater challenges in seeing equal justice under the law. From having to fight tooth and nail to see powerful predators like Ed Buck held accountable, to disproportionate disproportionately higher rates of incarceration to lack of cultural competence in our justice system. We must recommit to the fight today and every day for the most vulnerable in our community and ensure their voices are heard, honored, and protected. That fight must be led by all of us, but particularly those operating from a place of privilege. I want to thank Stonewall Democratic Club for your leadership in organizing and effecting change for our LGBTQ community, both in the street and at the ballot box. I am so proud to stand with you in this fight as we work towards a justice system where all members of our LGBTQ community are equal protection under the law. And happy Pride. So thank you, George Gascon. And that sounds very good to me. So everybody, if you'd like to help support George Gascon, georgegascon.org. Thank you so much. And now I have another surprise for you all. We have a little special appearance by someone that I think you will recognize. He's someone that has made some headlines this year and is a friend of the Stonewall Democrats. So if we could roll that, please.
Hello, it's Congressman Adam Schiff, and I'm excited to commemorate Pride with the Stonewall Democratic Club today on the 50th anniversary of this inspiring movement. To have gone from Stonewall to Obergefell and now to Bostock, and to have drastically changed public opinion in a few decades is a profound achievement. We still have far to go, but the LGBTQ community has decisively shown the world how to organize, vote, and truly make historic change. Last year, we had another success when the House passed the Equality Act, which amends the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to offer sweeping protections to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in both the public and private sectors. Groups with strong leadership from the LGBTQ community, like the Stonewall Democratic Club, Human Rights Campaign, and so many others, were essential to flipping the House and electing members committed to getting this legislation passed. There's still more work to be done. In the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic, the Trump administration has decided to roll back Obama-era protections that prohibit discrimination in healthcare based on gender identity. It's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's an important example of why we need to vote this disastrous administration out of office. And while last week we celebrated when the Supreme Court affirmed the Bostock ruling that you can't be fired from your job for being LGBTQ, we still need the Equality Act to extend those protections to many other areas of life and make this type of discrimination illegal once and for all. At a time when our country is facing up to the injustice and inequality faced by Black Americans, the events of Stonewall remind us how a protest can become a movement and how a movement can make us a better nation. Thanks to all of you for what you do. Keep organizing, keep using your voice, keep registering voters, and let's fight hard in November to make sure we have the government that truly recognizes equality as a human right. And now I'd like to share with you how I'm celebrating Pride this year.
Happy Pride, everybody. Happy Pride. Love is love. Happy Pride, everybody. Happy Pride.
I am so tickled by the video of Adam Schiff, Congressman Adam Schiff, on his little Pride float. I want to thank Congressman Schiff for sending us the message and for speaking to all our viewers and listeners tonight. You are an ally, and we really appreciate all you've done to help support our community. And happy Pride to Congressman Schiff. And you know, the video brought a smile to my face, and I wanted to just light it up for a minute and turn it to you guys for a second and just go around and talk about what it means to celebrate Pride and what it means to you this moment on this year, and how are you celebrating amidst a global pandemic. I would wish that we could be here together, hugging each other and talking in person, but unfortunately circumstances have us here. So how are you making the best of it, and how are you celebrating this year? Let's start with Reggie and just go clockwise.
So I am celebrating by trying to think about, I mean, obviously, when you're on a campaign, there's not a lot of time to think about other things other than the campaign. But I do think that this Pride for me is what's been important to me is remembering who is important in my life and all the where I draw inspiration from, or all the friends and family and chosen family who have been willing to pour themselves into my life and influence my belief, my faith, and really help me forward. So, I'm celebrating by trying to have as many Zoom conversations with friends and family around the country, trying to stay in touch with people. And I'm looking forward to a day in which with a new president, Joe Biden in the White House, we can celebrate Pride next year in a way that's a little bit more robust and thrilling. Maybe even light the White House up in rainbow colors again.
Yeah.
Those were the days, and hopefully we'll be having those days back real soon. Ryan, how are you celebrating your Pride this year?
I think my mic cut out.
Oh, we can hear you.
You're good.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think my mic went out, guys. Oh, you can. Okay, great. Then never mind. You can hear me. I didn't hear the question, so you guys can only hear me, but I can't hear you. But I think it had something to do with how we celebrate Pride. And great. It's been actually kind of an interesting way to celebrate Pride in the pandemic and with social distancing. And I feel like I agree with what Tori said earlier about how many people are risking their lives to get out and protest, and I'm a big fan of it. And I've done my part in that, although that's not exactly something that I feel as comfortable with. So I've done a lot of like taking water and taking masks down. I took a lot of masks down to some protests downtown. But as far as the actual celebration of Pride, I think it is really important that we celebrate how far we've come while acknowledging how far we have to go. And I think that so much we've learned, when Tori talked about that she hasn't seen a movement like this since the 60s. When this movement first started, there was something that sort of, or when this movement first hit my eyes, that's not when it started, but when it first came into my view, I thought, wow, we thought we did all this work all these years ago, and why do we have to do this again? And what I'm hoping is that we're learning that there's always going to be that work to do. We're always going to have to go in and take that inventory about what needs to be done. And that inventory includes celebrating Pride and being proud of who we are and being queer as hell and letting ourselves be seen, whatever that means to us. There's some days where I toss on a caftan and I feel really great about that. There's some days where tossing on a caftan and letting myself be my queerest self is a revolutionary act. And that is Pride to me. That's embracing it and going, what is queer culture? Because queer culture for me is the Black Trans Lives movement. It's also Liza with a Z streaming late at night on my Showtime. I'm it's whatever makes me feel in touch with the part of me that says I am an individual who's worth celebrating, and I am a part of a community full of individuals worth celebrating. So that's I guess what Pride means to me today. So thanks.
Mayor Horvath, you are the mayor of an extremely pro-LGBTQ city.
Literally can't hear you.
LGBTQ community in your city. How are you celebrating Pride and celebrating all the loved ones that you have that are LGBTQ?
Oh, we're celebrating in so many ways. The city has adopted One City, One Pride, which is a series of events to celebrate Pride in West Hollywood. It kicks off on Harvey Milk Day and goes all the way through the end of June. And so if you haven't yet been able to participate, we have an amazing event coming up on Tuesday. Make sure you watch the Circus of Books documentary on Netflix first. It's a panel discussion after, and it's going to be a great event. But we've had so many events throughout the month. But this has also been a time unlike any other. And so really finding, usually Pride, there's so many events where you're able to be together in person and connect with one another. And connection takes on a whole new meaning in this, in this space where we're practicing physical distancing to keep each other healthy and safe. And so, these virtual events have been a very important way for us to be in touch with one another. I know there's a telethon going on right now for Project Angel Food, and there's a Pride event going on ABC, and There's all kinds of virtual ways that people are connecting. I personally have been helping to deliver some meals with Project Angel Food to stay connected with people who are in need in this moment. And I think making sure that just because we're staying at home and practicing physical distancing, that we don't let people go unseen. And so continuing to reach out, continuing to be of service, and volunteering for those of us who are healthy and able to do so. But I want to also touch on what Ryan said, that we have to continue to challenge ourselves to do better. And it's not just about one Supreme Court decision or passing one law, because we know that there are many great laws on the books, but if they're not enforced, and more importantly, if they're not taken to heart and adapted into our culture, things don't change. And that's why, after the civil rights movement, we're now in this place where we're seeing all of the things that for white America are not everyday experiences, but for Black America are things that have been glossed over, gone unseen, or actively ignored. And so it's time to pay attention, to call and check ourselves on ways that we can do better, and to look at all the ways that we can work harder and be of service to the people who really need it, and uplift voices in the conversation that often go ignored and unheard.
Wonderful. Thank you. Blossom, how are you celebrating Pride?
Yeah,
What
to
does it
be
mean
honest
to
with you, to be honest with you, I'm not at all. And the reason why is because, I've been spending Pride fighting, period. Again, what's going on with the trans community, we're barely staying afloat. And, I am a server to my community. My transgender, non-conforming, non-binary community deserves so much better. They are powerful. They're true to themselves. And the reality of it is, this is a world that wants to shut us down. Pride is supposed to be a great time about loving who you are, being proud of who you are. But the reality of it is, me being a trans person and having to be proud of myself comes with a cost. And that cost could be my life. That cost could be obviously my healthcare rights. And so as an activist, as not even just as an activist, as a warrior, I like to call myself a warrior, because warriors will go through the pain, they'll go through the hurt, they'll go through the backstabbing, they'll do what they need to do to make sure that they protect those that they serve. And for me, that's my transgender, non-conforming, and non-binary community. Here's the reality: they don't have to like me in order for me to serve them, for me to be a leader. Like, they don't have to like me. It's not even about that. Like, when you're selfless, this work just continues. And Pride is definitely different this year. And I'm not trying to take away the joy or anything like that, because you got to try to find happiness in it. But the reality of it is, when you're in the trans community, and again, things are being erased from you, it's hard to find that joy and that happiness. So I want to take my little space right now, and I want to uplift and amplify every transgender, non-conforming, and non-binary person right now, and let them know to hold on, because we are in this ride together, and it's going to get very bumpy. But guess what? We are ready to face the world. We are ready to put our warrior makeup on, the lines across the cheeks, and we are ready to go to bat, because again, the work doesn't stop in our community. It doesn't stop in our community. It doesn't take a day to chill and relax and stuff. We have to keep going. And again, my call to action is, accomplices, step up. If you are cis, step up for the transgender, non-conforming, and non-binary community, period.
Thank you, Blossom, and very, very duly noted. Tori, what does Pride mean to you this year, and what are you doing to acknowledge Pride?
Well, I have my beads on, and I have my T-shirt on, and I will say that I always try to lift up lesbians. I feel like it's important to make lesbian visibility be a part of, all the time. But the most important thing that I feel like I'm doing for Pride, and in June in particular, is that my resistance work group called Team TO Resist and Rise is organizing Making Waves for Democracy on July 4th. It's a fundraiser, a $50 fundraiser Stonewall is one of the sponsors. We have close to 300 sponsors for Joe Biden for youth voter outreach. And I have made sure, so don't tell anybody, I have made sure that there are lots of queers in the program, and that the main live action is Sheila Kuehl and Bruce Valanche. And you know it's going to have kind of a gay theme. So that's my contribution for this year. But I will tell you that I think this year is mostly about dealing with America's original sin of racism and the systemic racism that is built particularly into law enforcement as we've grown increasingly militarized as a country. So I feel like my allyship work is cut out for me at the same time as I'm going to work my toughest off to make sure Joe Biden is elected, and we go blue everywhere. We take the Senate, we hold the House, we win Joe Biden, and I think that's part of pride, being queer and out as electoral organizers who are determined to take back our country and make democracy, work again.
Thanks, Tori. And, I think for me, pride, when I think of what pride means to me, it's about the spirit of activism and dissent and mobilizing and organizing and fighting for equality and for change. And there often has been, and I've heard from your answer, Tori, and from Blossoms, that there's often been sort of erasure from within our own communities towards very worthy members of our community, the lesbian community, the trans community, the non-binary community, which still is a new frontier, I think, for us, for the LGBTQ community, about intersex people and non-binary people. And for me, it's about fighting to educate ourselves. The duty comes to us, falls on us to educate ourselves and to lend our privilege to those who may not have it. I know that I can walk down the street or get pulled over by a cop and not get killed. And so, but I also realize and understand what it might feel like that my marriage could be taken away should that ever happen. So I think it's a time to examine our privilege, and it's a time to examine the soul of our community. So with that, I want to turn it to you guys in our final minutes. We have just a few more minutes. So just, 30 seconds or a minute. I want to hear from you about what is left to do for this community and this movement, and where you think that this is headed. Reggie.
Sure, I will kick it off. And I must say, thank you so much, first and foremost, for just having us this evening. And I really enjoyed the conversation. I want to say that Blossom, thank Blossom for bringing us back, or at least bringing me back. For me, this pride feels probably the most authentic to its original purpose, which was to protest against systemic injustice and to really fight back against a system that wasn't designed for us. And I didn't answer that fully in the previous question, but just sort of wanted to get that in there, because I think that is what's left, is to really think about our movement. Think about what's missing from it. Since the country is at this really powerful inflection moment, we have an opportunity to examine our entire movement, our communities, and root out all the problematic ways of thinking that won't allow us to build the coalition that we need, or won't allow us to build the government that we deserve. And so what is left is joining with communities, standing in solidarity, learning, listening, and engaging in the traditional electoral processes, albeit differently this year, so that we can elect people up and down the ticket who will do us right in government. So we are fighting hard to, in Vice President Biden's campaign, to include every LGBTQ voice, because we feel like every LGBTQ voice is the best way to build a good government. And so if you go to joebiden.com/LGBTQ, please join us in this fight. Please don't hesitate to reach out to those who are fighting alongside all of us to get get the government that we deserve, and just wishing you all the best as we continue to care for one another and fight for the shared future that we all deserve. So thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Ryan, where we got to go next, and what do you see the future of this movement being?
I read, can you hear me? I'm just double checking. Great. I read something online recently on a meme that like probably my aunt posted or something, but I saw something that I love, which is the idea that voting in elections is not about marriage. It's not about getting married to one candidate that you love. It's about who's driving the bus. It's about public transportation. And it's about getting on a bus that's going in the right direction. And we all have things that we know need to be dealt with on a major scale, a minor scale, and everything in between coming our way. And we just have to do whatever we can. When we are not shouting for what we know is right, we have to also listen to the people who are sitting behind us, who are out there in front of us, who know something that we don't know. And we have to listen, and we have to keep letting those people drive the bus for at least a good chunk of the way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do know that that we are going to have to come together in the next 120 days in a major way. That's then going to set a tone for a re-election, and then we're going to have to come together even more to keep the progress moving once Biden's in the office. So let's all just keep listening when we can, and using our voices to amplify the people who need to be heard.
Thank you, Ryan, so much. Mayor Horvath, closing thoughts?
So much work to do. So I'll try to just hit some of the highlights. We're in a global health pandemic, so working on making sure we keep people healthy and safe. We're in an economic downturn. How do we get people back to work safely? How do we make sure that people are able to stay in their homes, that they're able to put food on their table and take care of their families? We are seeing a fight for social justice, so we have to work on all of the issues and addressing systemic racism in all of the ways it permeates our culture. I know President Obama put out a call to mayors, which I have accepted, to address issues of use of force in law enforcement, and that's something I'm working on right now. But we also have to find ways that that we can uplift community voices and community response to safety issues. Whether it's community response teams to particular issues like we created in West Hollywood in response to domestic violence, or the alternatives to incarceration plan that LA County supervisors passed last year and are working to implement. That has to happen. But we also need to work to elect not only a new president, so we can be proud to use that word, but also people up and down the ticket. There are local races happening in November as well. It's going to be the first time West Hollywood's local elections are going to be on the November ballot. So we'll be active. We'll be out there talking about the issues. And please, 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 whatever you do, make sure you vote. You're going to get a ballot. If you register, you're going to get a ballot sent right to your house. Fill it out, turn it back in, make sure your voice is heard, and tell everyone else to do so.
Blossom, we've got about 3 minutes. I want to try to give Blossom and Tori as much time to give your closing thoughts.
Oh, so sweet. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on this panel. It was so powerful to be here with all of you. I think one thing we got to continue doing is dismantling white supremacy. We've got to continue to do that. And we got to continue to dismantle these injustices, these systems that don't work for us. We must continue to tear it down. We're in the year 2020. 2020 reduces to the number 4 in numerology. 4 in numerology is hard work, foundation, pragmatism. 2021 is the year of the number 5, which talks about challenge, change, and freedom. We are laying down the foundation for change and for freedom right now. And so it's really important, again, that we acknowledge these different variants and that we definitely are able to dismantle them so we can all be free. Because again, going back to what I was saying, until all Black people are free, none of us in the Black community are free. Until all LGBTQ people are free, without nobody being left out, without anyone's rights being left out, we are not free. Let's not get comfortable, fam. Let's not get too comfortable. We got to get ready to fight because we got a long road ahead of us. And it's going to take every single one of us together, standing in unity, to get that
done.
Thank you, Blossom. Tori, closing thoughts?
Well, you know, Bayard Rustin used to talk about from protests to politics. And I think we're in a moment where we're seeing the protests and we're seeing the politics. My generation separated them. We had very little trust in electoral politics. And I think there's 100 million people who didn't vote in the 2016 election who are part of the electorate. I think a lot of them are on the streets, and it's really important that we not just do protests, but that we do politics too, from protest to politics. So, march, vote, march, donate, march, volunteer, donate, vote, and march, march, march.
Thank you so much. Tori, we are running out of time, so I'd like to thank the many people it took to put this amazing event together, starting with our Vice President of Community, Drexel Hurd, and our Pride Chairman, Matthew Contreras. We'd like to thank Vic Gerami of The Blunt Post and Kevin Fleming of KPFK Radio for partnering with us to broadcast this event. I would like to thank the Stonewall Communications team, including our Vice President, Ryan Basham, Devin Adante, Jonathan Welch, Mackenzie Hussman, Anna Cosma, and Marcus Lovengood for the countless hours dedicated to planning, producing, designing, and promoting this event. Thanks to our stage manager, Steve Bott. A special thanks to George Gascon for sending in his message to us, and to Congressman Adam Schiff for appearing with us tonight, and to our esteemed panelists, Reggie Greer, Tori Osborne, Blossom Brown, Ryan O'Connor, and Mayor Lindsay Horvath. Thank you so much. This has been a production of the Stonewall Democratic Club. If you would like to help fight to take our country back this November in local, city, statewide, and national elections, please join us. We have a lot of work to do, and we need your help. Visit us at stonewalldems.org/join. For only $25 a year, you can become a member of this incredible organization and help make a change while honoring the many shoulders we stand on tonight. And by visiting stonewalldems.org/donate, you can help donate tonight and join one of the many donors tonight who helped support us. So if I may, I'd like to close us out tonight with some words for our listeners and our viewers on behalf of Stonewall Democrats. The first Pride was a riot. This month, the LGBTQ community has actively shared that message across social media and on signs at all Black Lives Matter protests and marches. Even here at the Stonewall Democratic Club, we are keenly aware of the fact that our namesake was born from a riot at the Stonewall Inn, where a trans woman of color by the name of Martha P. Johnson threw that first brick that would pave the way for a 50-year struggle for equal rights that continues on today. It was a biracial lesbian drag performer by the name of Storm DeLarvery who was believed to have thrown the first punch at Stonewall. Today, protesters who are calling for racial justice and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement use Stonewall to remind us that there's a connection between the fight for LGBTQ rights in America and the movement to end police brutality, to end a police surveillance state, and to protect people of color, especially Black Americans and Black trans women, who have so often been at the forefront of the fight for LGBTQ rights and yet are disproportionately targeted and killed merely for who they are. Tonight, we honor those men and women who came before us and whose shoulders we stand on, while acknowledging that there is no pride for some of us until there is liberation for all of us. And in order to achieve this, our community has some soul searching to do. Now is the time to revisit the history of our own liberation movement and to reignite that sense of dissent and activism that erupted at the Stonewall Inn all those decades ago. The first Pride March was indeed on the one-year anniversary of a riot, exactly 50 years ago tomorrow. But history has been rewritten to erase and whitewash the contribution of those at the front lines, the Black queer community, Black transgender women in particular. We owe much of our advancements to them, and because of that, we have a keen responsibility to support this movement with the same intensity as those who marched before us for liberation, who refused to be erased even as AIDS wiped out an entire generation of our people. The righteous, angry cries of Silence Equals Death by Larry Kramer, the playwright and ACT UP founder who passed away this year, resonate more now than ever. There are many avenues to contribute to this movement and to end the systemic oppression of marginalized communities. Whether it is rallying cries from the streets, whether it is using the pen and the podium, or whether it is a conversation with your friends and family, one thing is true, that we must turn this engagement, this fire, and this rallying cry into electoral change. If you are not registered to vote, now is the time. With less than 120 days to go, this is the most consequential election of our lives, so please visit us at stonewalldems.org/register and register to vote now. And from everyone at the Stonewall Democratic Club, I would like to wish you all a happy Pride, and remember, Black trans lives matter, and no justice, no peace. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and have a very good night. Thank you, guys. Thank you.